Annabel, her mother, Mrs. Eze, called from the kitchen. You are going to be late for school. Hurry up. I'm coming, Mama, Annabel replied, rolling her eyes. She pulled the covers over her head and sighed. She wasn't in a rush, nor did she care about school that much. She finally dragged herself out of the bed and walked into the bathroom to brush her teeth and take her bath. She dressed in her school uniform and grabbed her bag before going to the kitchen to take her breakfast. After eating, she left her place where she ate and off she went. Annabel was Mr. and Mrs. Eze's only daughter, and they had high hopes for her future. But lately, she had changed, and the once obedient and respectful girl now lived as though she had no rules to follow. After she left home, she met her two best friends, Janet and Faith, outside the gates. The trio laughed loudly as they walked down the street, their school bags swinging casually behind them. Janet was tall and bold, always coming up with ideas that landed them in trouble. Faith, on the other hand, was quieter but no less mischievous. Together, they were inseparable, much to Mrs. Eze's dismay. Annabel, I've told you time and time again to stay away from those girls, her mother had said the night before. They are not good influences, and they will only lead you astray. Mama, please, Annabel said. They are my friends. They've done nothing wrong. You have to listen to me before these two land you in trouble. Her mother warned her, but Annabel paid no attention. She believed she knew better. As they walked, Janet suddenly suggested, let's not go to school today. Tony said we should come over. He's having a party, and his friends are coming too. Faith's eyes lit up. A party? This early? Yes, Janet said, grinning. You know Tony doesn't follow the rules. His house is the perfect spot. What do you think, Annabel? Faith asked, turning to her. Annabel hesitated for a moment. Her parents' warnings rang faintly in her ears, but she quickly shrugged them off. Let's go. School can wait. The three girls changed their direction and headed towards Tony's house. Tony was Janet's boyfriend, a 22-year-old with no good job. He lived in a dilapidated apartment that always smelled of alcohol and cigarettes. When they arrived, the music was already blasting, and a group of jobless young men like Tony were in the living room. Tony greeted them warmly, offering them drinks and snacks. Relax, ladies, Tony said, dragging his arm around Janet. This is your home too, you know. Annabel laughed nervously as one of Tony's friends, a tall young man named Kelvin, began chatting with her. She didn't notice the time slipping away, nor did she care. Meanwhile, back at home, Mrs. Eze was pacing the living room, glancing at the clock. Every few minutes, something didn't feel right. Where could she be? She asked her husband. She should be in school, Mr. Eze said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. She will be back later. But Mrs. Eze's motherly instinct told her otherwise. It was way past closing time, and she was worried. At Tony's house, the girls were having the time of their lives, laughing and dancing. They never went to school for that day at all. Annabel felt a kind of happiness that she couldn't explain. This was freedom, she thought. This was what it meant to live. But deep down, a voice kept whispering to her, what if your parents find out? The day passed quickly, and as the sun began to set, the girls realized they needed to go home. What do we tell our parents? Faith asked nervously. We will say we had extra classes, of course, Janet suggested. Annabel nodded, but her heart raced. She didn't know how long she could keep lying. As they walked home, Annabel couldn't shake the feeling that her parents would deal with her this time. Annabel tiptoed into the house that evening, her heart pounding as she imagined her mother's reaction. But her efforts to sneak in unnoticed were futile. Mrs. Eze was waiting in the living room, her arms crossed and a stern expression on her face. She had been looking for Annabel all over the place. "Where have you been?" she demanded an answer. Annabel froze. "We had extra classes," she lied, avoiding her mother's piercing gaze. "Extra classes?" Mrs. Eze repeated, her voice rising. "Do you think I'm a fool? Your school dismissed hours ago." I lost track of time," Annabel stammered, knowing her excuse sounded stupid. Her father walked in from the bedroom, his face grim. "Annabel, this behavior of yours is unacceptable. You are banned from going anywhere for 2 weeks. No going out except for school. And no visitors. Those useless girls you call friends should not step their feet in my house." Annabel's anger fled. "That's not fair, Dad. I'm not a child anymore." "Don't you dare talk back at your father," her mother snapped. "Go to your room before I close my eyes and open them." Fuming, Annabel stormed to her room, slamming the door behind her. She grabbed her phone and texted Janet and Faith, venting her frustrations. Her parents didn't even know that she had a phone. "This is why you need to stand up to them," Janet said. "They can't control you forever. I talk to my parents anyhow I like. And you need to learn that too, Annabel. Don't be a coward. They are just your parents. They have no authority over your life," Janet said to Annabel. Faith chimed in. "Exactly, Annabel. You are 16. They need to respect your decisions." The following morning, Annabel pretended to head to school as usual. She met Janet and Faith at their usual spots. But instead of going to class, they went to Kelvin's house. Kelvin and Annabel had become couples from the party at Tony's place. Kelvin greeted Annabel with a wide smile, pulling her into a hug. "I missed you," he said, making her blush. Kelvin locked the door immediately the girls entered his room. He couldn't wait to get down to business. The days turned into weeks, and Annabel's visit to Kelvin's house became frequent. She skipped school more often, spending her days with him instead. Janet and Faith encouraged her every step of the way, telling her that she deserved to live her life the way she wanted. But at home, her parents were growing more suspicious. Mrs. Eze noticed Annabel's grades dropping and received complaints from her teachers about her frequent absences. One evening, after dinner, her parents confronted her. "Annabel, your school called again today," her father said. "They said you haven't been attending classes regularly. Where have you been going to?" Annabel crossed her arms defiantly. "Why are you always on my case? I'm not a baby." Her mother gasped. "Annabel, we are your parents. It's our duty to guide you. Don't you see the path you are taking is dangerous?" "You just don't understand me," Annabel shouted before storming out of the room. Janet's words echoed in her mind. "You need to stand up to them." Back in her room, she texted Kelvin. "They are at it again. I can't take this anymore." "Don't worry," he replied. "You can always come to me." Annabel smiled, feeling reassured. Little did she know that her choices were leading her down a path she might one day regret. One morning, Annabel left the house, her school bag hanging over her shoulder. Mrs. Eze watched from the kitchen window, her heart heavy with suspicion. The complaint from Annabel's school and her sudden change in behavior made her worried. She decided she would get to the bottom of it that day. Quietly, Mrs. Eze followed Annabel, maintaining a safe distance. She watched as her daughter met up with Janet and Faith, laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. Her heart sank when she saw the girls changing direction, heading away from school. Where are they going? Mrs. Eze asked herself, quickening her pace to keep up. After several turns, the girls arrived at a small apartment. Mrs. Eze hid behind a tree and waited. Moments later, a young man opened the door and greeted them warmly. Annabel stepped inside with him, her laughter like a needle piercing her mother's heart. Mrs. Eze's face burned with anger. She marched to the door, her fury growing with every step. Without hesitation, she banged on the door until it swung open. Kelvin stood there, startled. "Ma, who are you?" "Where is my daughter?" Mrs. Eze demanded, pushing past him. Annabel appeared from the living room, her face draining of color when she saw her mother. "Mama, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" Mrs. Eze shouted. "What are you doing here? Is this your school?" Annabel tried to explain, but her mother's patience had run out. She grabbed Annabel by the arm and yanked her towards the door. "You think you can embarrass your father and I?" Mrs. Eze yelled, her voice trembling with rage. "I warned you about this behavior." Kelvin stepped forward, but Mrs. Eze shot him a glare that froze him in place. "Stay out of this," she barked. Annabel's friends hid by the corner of the room. Dragging a humiliated Annabel down the streets, Mrs. Eze ignored her daughter's protest and the stares of passerby. When they got home, she ordered Annabel into the house and slammed the door behind her. "You are grounded indefinitely," Mrs. Eze declared. "No more leaving this house except for school, and I will personally follow you to school and pick you up after school." Annabel said nothing, her face dark with anger. That evening, while her parents were out, Annabel made up her mind. She packed her clothes in a bag, her heart pounding in her chest. "They don't understand me," she muttered. "I'll be happier with Kelvin." She sneaked out of the house and made her way to Kelvin's apartment. When he opened the door, he looked surprised but pleased. "I couldn't stay there anymore," Annabel said, stepping inside. "I'm staying with you now." Kelvin hesitated but eventually nodded. "All right, you can stay. But are you sure about this?" "I'm sure," Annabel replied, though deep down in her heart, she was uncertain of her decision. As night fell, Annabel lay awake. "Good," Mrs. Eze said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. The officers handcuffed Kelvin and led him out of the apartment. Annabel screamed and tried to follow, but her father blocked her path. "You are coming home with us," he said firmly. "No!" Annabel shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "You don't have a choice," her mother said. "We have let you go too far. This ends now." Despite her protests, Mr. and Mrs. Eze forced Annabel into their car and drove her back home. The journey was tense and silent, except for Annabel's occasional sobs. When they arrived, Annabel stormed into the house, slamming the door to her room. Her parents followed, determined to have a serious talk. "You have embarrassed this family," her father said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Annabel glared at them. "I love Kelvin. You can't control my life forever." "Love?" Her mother spat. Is this what you call it? What about your future, Annabel? What about your education? I don't care about school, Annabel yelled. Before her parents could respond, Annabel's knees suddenly bucked and she grabbed her stomach. Annabel, her mother cried, rushing to her side. Annabel was taken to the hospital, where the doctors confirmed what her parents had feared the most. She was pregnant. Mrs. Eze broke down in tears, clutching her husband's arm. Our daughter, she just 16. Mr. Eze looked away, his face etched with pain. When Annabel woke up, her parents sat beside her bed with angry faces and broken hearts. Do you see what your disobedience has brought you? Her father said, his voice breaking. Annabel turned her face away, unable to meet their eyes. She couldn't believe it herself when the doctor told them that she was pregnant. As the reality of her situation sank in, Annabel began to wonder if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. News of Annabel's pregnancy spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Whispers followed her wherever she went, and even at the market, women would stop talking as soon as they saw her. But the most painful blow came when Janet and Faith, her closest friends, began to distance themselves from her. Annabel called Janet one afternoon. Can we sit tomorrow? I want to tell you something, she said, her voice trembling. I'm busy, Janet replied curtly. What about next tomorrow? Annabel pressed, hoping for a different answer. Look, Annabel, Janet said. Her tone was cold. I don't think we should be seen together anymore. You've got baggage now. Annabel's heart sank as the line went dead. Faith's silence was even louder. She simply stopped returning Annabel's calls altogether. At home, tension ran high. Mr. and Mrs. Eze couldn't hide their anger. One evening, after a heated argument, her father made a decision. You think you've grown enough to make these choices? Fine. Go and live with Kelvin. You are his responsibility now, he said, his voice shaking with frustration. Annabel's mother looked away, tears streaming down her face. We tried to warn you, Annabel. This is the life you chose. Even though Mrs. Eze didn't want her daughter to go, she couldn't go against her husband's decision. The following day, Annabel found herself standing in front of Kelvin's apartment with her bags and nowhere else to go. Kelvin opened the door. His face was pale. What are you doing here? He asked, clearly unprepared for the situation. He was not ready to be a father, so he had been scared since he heard the news of Annabel's pregnancy. Was that why her parents released him from custody? Well, he would have preferred being in detention than having to deal with this. My parents sent me here, Annabel said quietly. They said I should stay with you. Kelvin hesitated but eventually stepped aside to let her in. If only Annabel knew what she was walking into. Life with Kelvin was far from what Annabel had imagined. The apartment was cramped and barely furnished. Did she notice that? Kelvin was jobless, and whatever money he had saved from gambling quickly ran out. Annabel, who had been used to her parents' care, found herself cooking, cleaning, and struggling to make ends meet. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of her situation became clearer. Kelvin spent most of his time with his friends, leaving Annabel alone to deal with her pregnancy. Kelvin, we need food, Annabel said one evening, her voice trembling. I don't have any money, he replied, shrugging. Can't you call your parents? My parents? Annabel's voice rose. They sent me here. I am now your responsibility, not theirs. Kelvin sighed and walked out, leaving Annabel in tears. As the months passed, Annabel began to see the full consequences of her actions. Her once carefree life was now filled with struggle, and the love she thought she had found with Kelvin began to feel like a distant memory. Living with Kelvin became a nightmare for Annabel. His initial indifference turned into open hostility. He would leave the house early and return late, often drunk and irritable. Annabel, heavily pregnant and without support, bore the brunt of his frustration. "Kelvin, we don't even have anything in this house," Annabel said one evening, clutching her growing belly. "That's your problem," Kelvin snapped, sitting on the torn couch. "Figure it out." Tears welled in Annabel's eyes as she watched him light a cigarette. Completely unmoved by her plight, she had not eaten all day, and the little money she had was long gone. Days blurred into nights, and Annabel's hunger became unbearable. She scavenged through the sparse cupboards, finding nothing but a half-empty tin of gari. She poured some into a bowl with water, her hands shaking as she ate the tasteless meal. "This isn't the life I wanted," she whispered to herself, tears streaming down her face. Kelvin's temper worsened as Annabel's due date approached. He would yell at her for the smallest things, often blaming her for their predicaments. "You brought this on yourself," he said one night after a heated argument. "I never asked you to come here." He went as far as beating her up that night, not minding she was almost due for delivery. About a week later, Annabel gave birth to a baby boy in a poorly equipped clinic. The experience was horrible, with no one by her side except a kind midwife. When she returned to Kelvin's apartment with the baby, she hoped things would improve, but they only got worse. Kelvin's neglect turned to outright cruelty. He refused to buy baby supplies or food, leaving Annabel to beg neighbors for help. The baby's cries echoed through the small apartment, a constant reminder of her suffering. One night, as she rocked her baby to sleep, Annabel broke down. "I made the wrong choice," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I should have listened to my parents." The next morning, Annabel packed a small bag. With her baby in her arms, she walked to her parents' house, her heart pounding with fear and shame. When she arrived, she stood outside the gate for several minutes, unsure of what to do. Finally, she knocked. Mrs. Eze opened the door and froze. "Annabel," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Mama, I'm sorry," Annabel said, falling to her knees. "I made a mistake. Please forgive me." Mr. Eze appeared behind his wife, his face stern but his eyes softening as he saw the baby. They both looked horrible. It was obvious that they had been through a lot. "Get up, Annabel," he said quietly. "Come inside." As Annabel stepped into her childhood home, she felt a wave of relief. She knew she had a long road ahead to earn back her parents' trust, but she was ready to start over. Annabel's return to her parents' home was not without its challenges. Though Mr. and Mrs. Eze forgave her, they made it clear that rebuilding trust would take time. They supported her and her baby, ensuring they had food, shelter, and care. "You are our daughter, Annabel," her mother often said, "but this is a lesson you will carry with you forever." Annabel took those words to heart. She devoted herself to caring for her baby, but the memories of her past mistakes haunted her. The news of her friends and classmates graduating from secondary school hit her hard. Janet and Faith posted pictures of their graduation day on social media, smiling in their gowns with their certificates in hand. Annabel sat on her bed, staring at the images on her phone, tears streaming down her face. "This could have been me," she whispered, clutching her baby close. Her friends deceived her. She could have been wise. Her parents encouraged her to return to school, but Annabel was hesitant. The thought of walking back into a classroom filled her with anxiety. What will people say? She asked her mother. "People will always talk," Mrs. Eze replied gently, "but it's better to face them than to let their words define your future." Annabel nodded but couldn't shake her fear. Weeks turned into months, and though she hadn't yet gathered the courage to go back to school, the desire to do so grew stronger with each passing day. Every night, as she rocked her baby to sleep, Annabel reflected on her choices. She thought about the warnings she had ignored, the trust she had broken, and the opportunities she had missed. If only I had listened to Mama and Papa, she would think, her heart heavy with regrets. Though the path ahead seemed difficult, Annabel vowed to make a better life for herself and her child. She learned to appreciate her parents' sacrifices and understood the value of their guidance. Her parents became a cautionary tale for others, a reminder that disobedience and poor choices could lead to consequences that would last a lifetime. As though Annabel's journey was far from over, one thing was certain: she would never forget the hard lessons she had learned. And that was how the story of Annabel ended. Thank you so much for listening to my story. My name is Onyi of Onyi Stories and Folktales. And please, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, kindly be a part of my growth. Please click on that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, so when I post more interesting stories and life lesson filled stories like this, you'll be the first to get them. And if you're a returning subscriber, hey, thank you. Thank you so much for always coming back. Thank you for your support. I do not take it for granted. And please, if you haven't watched my other videos, trust me, I have interesting life lesson filled videos that you will love to learn from. Please click on the subscribe button if you haven't. See you in my next video. Bye-bye.